right, let's move on to Sean in Minnesota.
Hello, Sean.
Sean, hi.
What's going on today?
Hi. I'm doing well.
Awesome. What can we help you with?
I'm an individual that moves back and forth between theism and atheism, mostly for the social reasons. and as I kind of try
to the atheist side for the social reasons, right?
Yes, clearly.
Go ahead.
In trying to reconcile this for myself, I see gods, religion, and religious ideas. They're all social constructs. And the idea that we have to have this argument of to believe or to not believe seems to be some kind of false dichotomy that really doesn't lead anywhere. And it kind of digresses into my way is better than your way all the time, and everybody goes off in the corners and we agree to disagree. So why aren't we able to have a discussion that isn't so divisive, that simply acknowledges that religion and gods are part of our history, a shared history as humans, and the coping and social mechanisms that were required to survive thousands of years ago, they are what they are, and the books document what they are, and we don't need to get all wrapped around the axle arguing about them, and some of them don't apply anymore.
Well, I have several thoughts on this. On the one hand, I'd say one of the reasons we can't have a conversation about that is try telling that to a theist. But also, I think that it's great that Anthony's here because this is kind of his forte, having these conversations in a productive way that don't send people spinning off to their separate corners, angry at each other. So I will give this over to him in a minute. I do just want to address one thing. I can't speak for all atheists, of course. I can only speak for myself and for the limited number of people with whom I've had this conversation. But I don't think there are many atheists who deny the fact that religion and gods are part of our history or are a cultural phenomenon or are a social construct that at one point may have been more useful than they are now. So if that's the kind of person you're talking with, that's very interesting. Get them to call the show and we'll have a conversation with them. I think that the issue, the reason we have these heated debates and the reason that there is this contention, at least from my point of view, is because often there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. My way is better than your way can be nitpicky and divisive for no reason, or it can be, hey, I don't think we should be stoning people for being gay. That is objectively a better way to be. So a lot of the time, yes, it can be, especially if you're thinking about like online debates on Twitter or in the YouTube comments, yes, it's going to sound divisive and nitpicky and just getting on each other's nerves for the heck of it. But the larger conversation is important. And as long as that is a conversation that needs to be had, I think we need to have it. But I'm going to pass this off to Anthony to talk about how to have these conversations in a non-aggressive way.
Well, yeah. Well, when you first started, you were talking about how you thought that the social aspects are what's keeping people maybe into the religion. Was that what you were saying?
Well,
was that sort of your main argument?
Well, I don't want to assert an argument. What I'm trying to do is share my experience, which is a little different. And in the work that I do, I'm probably, you're like my kid's age. So in my career and the things that I do in the world, being affiliated or not hostile to religions and religious people is a social advantage. It helps, and if I were to take the opposite perspective, it would turn combative, and I wouldn't be as successful doing what I do. I think that's a palpable, real thing to have conversations about. But it's tough to find an audience that is able to have that conversation.
Yeah, you can't force anyone to have a conversation that they don't want to have. So you need a willing participant. So if these folks are willing to talk with you about why they think that they have the truth, or their religion is the one true religion, or that the social advantages that you get from following my God supersede all the other ones. If they're not willing to have that talk with you, of course, you really can't do it. You can try. You're probably not going to get very far, or they may just troll you to make you think that you're actually having a conversation with them. So what I would just simply do is ask a person if they're willing to explore their claim with you. Why do you think you're getting value from this that you couldn't otherwise get elsewhere? But again, if they're not willing to talk with you about it, you're not going to get very far.
Well, what happens is this place that I'm at, that these today, if you find somebody, let's talk to them. I'm one of these people. Let's try to find this common.
You need at least two willing people, though. So just because you're willing doesn't mean that they're willing. And it may be they might be unwilling to engage with you because I don't want to, believe me, I've had horrible engagements with people. But if you've argued with people in the past, they may be less willing to engage with you, maybe because you made them look stupid, or you gave them some facts that they couldn't counter, or something like that. If you have a history with a person, then that might even be a reason why they don't want to engage with you. But if you can find a willing participant and you can engage with them asking questions and push back on their religious claims, you can certainly do it. We do that on this show. We do that in street epistemology all the time.
Sean, are you making the case that we shouldn't be having these conversations and just go along to get along?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay,
and
that's good.
When I have these conversations, what I find is I'm trying to take this kind of soft middle ground, and now I'm fighting both sides. And it's like, well, I find that an interesting response, because I'm not trying to assert there is a deity, and I'm not trying to assert there is not a deity. I'm just trying to assert that, hey, look, this is a common history. We can't demonstrate it either way, and until somebody does, that's the state that we're in. So what point is it to try to have an argument of my way's better, because I can show you that God does actually exist, and there's all kinds of weird arguments in that place that really don't make any sense.
Well, if you haven't looked into street epistemology yet, there might be something to look into, because when you use that approach of asking questions, you generally don't need to reveal your position or take a side. You can have a position, you can have a side, and you can even reveal it, but you don't necessarily have to. And you can use the exact same questioning approach with somebody who thinks that God is real and somebody who thinks that God isn't real. So it might be a tool that you might actually be really geared for, that tool, especially, if you're the kind of person that, I don't really want to fight really hard for a position, but I might want to push back a little bit on what somebody's saying. But to V's point, are you ambivalent about the whole thing? Do you sort of look at the arguments that are going back and forth, and you're like, I just don't want to have anything to do with it? Or are you the type of person who does want to get involved and engage with people and challenge them when they say something? What kind of person are you?
I used to be much more combative, and let's have a throwdown and really resolve this. As I've gotten older, it's more of, okay, peace in the household has more value to me than being right. And so the social aspect of it, okay, what is the pragmatic outcome that, and how are we going to talk about this from a social perspective? And you brought up the history of religion against gay people. That is for me, that is tragic. And the books document what people used to think and what people used to do. We know much more now. We're more civilized. We don't need those laws. And there's evidence in there that says homosexuality has been around humans as long as there's been humans, basically. It's not an aberration. It's not an abomination. Let's get over these antiquated social constructs.
So it sounds like you do care.
No, see, here's the thing. I agree with you, definitely, that if we look at this book as, hey, this is something we used to believe as a society, we don't believe that anymore. The only reason that we're not still right there is because of the conversations about whether or not there's a God and why we should be holding certain values over others. So I get where you're coming from, that there should be a middle ground in terms of, hard atheism and hard theism, and I personally fall in that middle ground too. I don't know, and I'm not going to argue that yes, there certainly is no God, because that's a positive claim that I don't think I can back up. But to say that we need to not have these kinds of conversations that are combative is, to me, counterintuitive if you're pointing at how far humanity has come. We've come this far because we've had these hard and often combative conversations.
No, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. The thing that I find frustrating is, why can't we have a rational conversation? Why does it need to be combative? We can just actually talk through as adults that are reasonable and rational and go,
I see.
Any parent that would forsake their child for whatever reason, that's kind of despicable. So
humans get really particular about the beliefs that we hold, and of course we act out on the beliefs that we hold, and we think that we're good people because of the beliefs that we hold. So pushing back on these beliefs, I think, are really important, because whether you argue and you debate, or you use a Socratic approach like street epistemology or anything else, this is the way that we challenge the views of the people around us so that we can make the world a little bit of a better place for the other people who will come after us. Mm-hmm. So while you yourself may be at this point in your life a little ambivalent about it, like, I don't really see the whole point of all this arguing. But there are a lot of people who do, and maybe just sitting on the sidelines for a little bit and seeing the different types of conversations that people are having about those topics, where they're productive. They really can be productive if you go about it in the right way with the person that you happen to be speaking with. So getting an idea of, not only do I have a willing participant, but where do I need to meet this person? What type of approach will they respond to best is extremely important, because you may use a soft approach with somebody who might respond better to facts and debate. So you really need to have a little bit of an engagement to assess, how do I meet them? And maybe in some situations, the best decision is to not engage with them. But for the most part, generally, pushing back on claims that people make is what we need to do to make this world a better place. Mm-hmm. But I understand, as you're going through life, and it may not be the best time for you to do it at this moment, there are people who are willing to do that. And I hope that you look into some of the other methods that are available to you, because I suspect if you looked into something like street epistemology or Socratic questioning, what they do here on the show, you're watching a show where they do that. So, yeah. Well, let me ask you, I actually wanted to ask you, were you always an atheist?
No, I don't know if I am now.
Would you like to know? Would you like to know if you're an atheist or a theist? Do you care?
Actually, I don't care.
You don't care.
Here's a saying. Here's a test that I give in the discussions I have with folks. Okay, say, for example, just for sake of discussion, tomorrow they prove God exists. What would you change in your beliefs and your behaviors? Okay,
right. Would our lives change in any way if God was real or not real? How would it change? And if we can't really come up with a good answer, I could understand why you might be like, well, I don't really care about that. I don't really care about that answer. But a lot of other people do care about what that answer is, and they act out on it, and they want laws to be enacted because of where they stand on those claims. So even though we may be ambivalent about it, we don't care about it, there's a hell of a lot of people that do, man. And
that's
we can't let people just walk all over us. We have to push back.
And that's why I reject Islam, because Islam kind of goes backwards from where Christianity was trying to go thousands of years ago.
So it seems like...
Well, now we're getting into a whole other topic, which we should definitely... I mean, I'm curious about this as well, but I think we may need to save that for another call. but I don't know. I think, well, what you describe yourself as is probably closest to an atheist. You are apathetic about theism, whether there is a God or there isn't. I don't necessarily, I'm happy that you have reached that place, because in a perfect world, that's where we'd all be. We all would be, who cares? Who fucking cares? But the only way we're going to get there and create a society where people have the privilege of being apathetic about whether or not there is a God is if we have those hard conversations and argue and potentially make each other angry sometimes. So I'm not saying that always needs to be the case. I'm not saying every theist you talk to, you need to, or atheist you talk to, you need to have this conversation about by any means. I have many atheist friends and many theist friends, and we don't talk about religion all the time. In fact, hardly ever. So I'm not saying that that's a requirement for relationships with atheists or theists. I am saying that well, why can't we all just get along is great, and that's where we want to go eventually, but we're not there yet. And the only way we get there is by caring enough to combat the people who want to take those rights away from us.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
The church I'm affiliated with, I got them to start a skeptics discussion where we started talking about, okay, all the stuff that doesn't make any sense and how does this stuff still reconcile. That was great for a while. Then it got to the point where, wow, I'm actually casting doubt on things, and they shut everything down. Okay, so they're not really interested in understanding what really happened. So
no. I wouldn't conflate the two. Just because someone is expressing doubt and they want to end the talk, it's not necessarily an indication that they are ambivalent about it or they don't care about it either. You're probably hitting a nerve with them, and you're causing them to think about something that's very core to who they are. And of course, we act out on the beliefs that we hold. So I wouldn't sell yourself short. You may be misinterpreting the reactions that you're getting from people when you do engage with them. And I don't know. I'm wondering if you're engaging with people and you're noticing their reactions and you're thinking, oh, they don't care about it. And therefore you're not caring about it either because you're thinking that they don't. Is that the case?
That could be. I haven't put that much thought into it. We just start things and you kind of see where they go, and they run out of gas. And okay, this is not fertile ground for this conversation. You kind of let it die, and then start it up in some other context.
Yeah. The other thing too, I found is that you don't always have to be talking about a sensitive topic like God with somebody who may give you that reaction of, while you're asking me questions, I'm starting to doubt, let's change the subject, or let's not ever talk about this again. And maybe mistakenly give you the impression that they don't care about the topic. You can talk about safer topics and still challenge the person about it. And you may notice a different reaction when you talk about paper bags versus plastic as opposed to God. More than likely, people do care, but you may be scaring them off by the questions and the interactions that you're having, especially if it's with a theist and they can't back up their claim.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for calling. We do need to jump to other callers, Sean, because we're getting pretty close to the top of the hour.
Sean.
But I do appreciate the conversation. I do think that we can afford to be able to play in the middle ground a little bit more and see things from each other's point of view. But we do still need to have those hard conversations if we want progress to happen. So thank you. And if you do want to call back, I'll be here next week.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. And if Sean or anyone else is not willing to have those conversations, there are lots of people who are. We're on the Discord server. We're on shows like this. There's a whole host of people who want to talk to you about why you think God is real. And we have all different styles. So if it's not your cup of tea at this particular time in your life, send them our way.